Hey everybody, welcome. Good to see you, or be seen anyways. Hope you're doing well. This video is going to be on introduction to brands and branding, and a lot of energy and effort spent in um, kind of defining a brand, developing a brand, maintaining a brand image, and those types of things. So we're going to talk about those things today. And we're going to talk a little bit about why branding is important from a firm's perspective. So again, there's a lot of work and a lot of jobs out there that focus on brand management, brand development. So it's a big part of marketing. So brand, if you're going to focus on the term, which is really important to do in this area, just because it is such a big area, is a name, term, sign, symbol, or design, or a combination that's intended to identify basically a brand or a product or a company, a group of sellers, or maybe even a person or an individual, and differentiate them from others. So in other words, it's like your mark, it's your image, it's who you are, and it represents you as a product or a business or organization, or again, individual. And it helps us differentiate or distinguish ourselves from other folks. Marketers, as we develop a brand, believe that the brand itself is a value. So like some customers buy a product and they really, the actual product's indistinguishable from others except that it has a name on it. And they're buying that name, which represents, kind of an image or a philosophy or something like that. So buying the name is the same as buying a brand. Buying the brand represents something that has been developed over time. So brands in and of themselves have value to the customer, but it's also, they have monetary value to the firm as well. When we talk about that value to the firm, it's referred just generically as brand equity. So in other words, a brand has some financial value to the company. That financial value is termed brand equity. So let's talk a little bit about why a brand is valuable or has value to the firm. A strong brand, a brand that is recognized by a lot of people, that has a high awareness, a brand that's considered good quality, a brand that's considered maybe a leader or really good at what it does, or the products that it has. It helps customers make purchases. It helps them go through the decision-making process faster, and that helps us sell more products. So it helps facilitate, or it helps customers make a decision to make purchases. It also helps encourage customer loyalty. That's a big driver of a brand, like customer loyalty. Distinguishes, as I've mentioned, this idea from my product to that of my competitor's product. It helps customers see that mine is mine and theirs is theirs. It helps distinguish us and define differences in the marketplace. A strong brand that is well known and known for good things can charge more for their product. That's what we call a price premium. So that's a big thing. It certainly increases the market value of the company. So let's say I've got a company and we have a really good brand reputation. If I go to sell my company, I can get more money for my company because of that. If I offer stocks and I'm publicly traded, my stock price will be higher if my brand value is greater. So again, there's like this monetary thing. It also helps us do marketing efforts. So like one of the marketing things we do is we develop new products. Having a brand facilitates and helps us launch new products. People recognize our brand. When they see a new product from my brand, they associate good feelings towards that new product, even though they've never even seen the product or used the product. They associate good quality. If Mercedes comes out with a new car, you're going to assume that this new car is a pretty decent product because it's a Mercedes, right? You don't have to see it. You don't have to drive it. You don't have to, right? You can just kind of assume that it's going to be a good quality product because of the name that's associated with it, right? So these are all good things, right? And we spend an enormous amount of effort and time thinking about the value of a brand. There are all kinds of different ratings and rankings of brands. This is one ranking of the world's top most valuable brands. So in other words, how much money these brands are worth in the marketplace. If you were going to buy Apple, the company, and you're going to pay money and you just wanted the name Apple, it would be worth $322 billion according to this data, this rank. So that's real money. If you were going to buy the name, buy the image, buy all the logos, and you had the rights to them, and nobody else did, right? That's what it would be worth. That's the investment that it would cost. And so you see these other ones, Toyota, of course, Google, Coca-Cola is always way up there. McDonald's is often in the top 10, not always, but always, kind of up there somewhere. Toyota has a good name. You think about all the names you see on here, and you can think of pretty positive qualities about every one of them in terms of the products they offer, the consistency of the product, kind of what they do, and how they are positioned. Okay, so yeah, this is some of the elements that we want to look at. Now, there are going to be 4 things that we think of that drive this equity concept or this value concept for the firm. One is going to be awareness. So this idea of it's recognizable, there's a familiarity to it. All the names on that list you just saw, you are probably very familiar with. You're aware of them. And so awareness, building awareness, letting people know about you is one of the big drivers of this. So more people who are aware of the product, the greater the chance of purchase, of course, and the more visible the product is. Here's an example of watermelon water that is promoted by a co-owner or partial owner, Beyonce. And Beyonce is a big name. Attaching her name to a brand builds awareness for that brand. And that's what, one of the things we want to do in marketing. We want to drive awareness because that helps develop the brand value. Okay, another component of the 4 is perceived value. So perceived value is this idea that you get you get a lot of benefits for the cost or the price you have to give up. So remember what value is to the customer. It's the ratio of benefits to costs. If there's a lot of benefits associated with a cost, then that'll be perceived as good value. Good value helps drive brand equity, this thing that we're talking about. And you can think of lots of different companies out there. They don't have to be like luxury goods, but if you feel like you get a good value for your money, then that will translate into a good thing. Okay. Third is something called brand associations. When we talk about an association, what we're talking about is a mental or emotional link that is made between the product and the experience a customer has with the product. So when you think of a name, you think of like maybe memories or experiences you've had with that name. So think of a brand, think of the experiences, or you maybe link the name with something that you can kind of attach to. So you attach these associations to it. When State Farm Insurance says in their tagline, "Like a good neighbor, State Farm is here," they're building an association between State Farm and a neighborhood, State Farm and a community, State Farm and helping your neighbor, being that person who helps out, right? So State Farm then is a neighbor to you. State Farm is somebody who helps out. State Farm is all those things that they want you to associate a neighbor to be with them by using that linkage. So it's a mental and emotional link that's formed. And again, there's some strategy and there's work that we do to create these linkages to build value. Okay, the last component here, the last thing we'll say is loyalty. Again, this was something we looked at earlier. It's a huge element when we talk about building brands and developing brands, is this notion that that when a customer likes a brand, they keep going back to it, and they're less likely to go to a competitor. They'll spend more money with us. They'll cost us less to service, and so they're good. It's one of those metrics that lead to a lot of other things. So if you have good loyalty, if you move the loyalty number up, measure up, then all kinds of other things. Your profitability goes up, your churn rate goes down. I mean, there are all kinds of other things that happen as a result of that are good. Your market share goes up. And so that's kind of one of the triggers that we look for. And again, it's one of the components, that kind of we work towards building when we build brand value. Okay, so absolutely, lots of interesting things as far as why the brand is valuable to the firm. What are some of the components then of brand identity? So when we talk about brands, the thing we jump to the first isn't so much what we've talked about with brand equity. It's the components, or what we call the elements of a brand. So how do we deliver and develop a brand? Well, remember, this is something that distinguishes us from somebody else, right? It's a distinctiveness. So what is the thing that you identify a brand with? Its name, probably the name that's been chosen. Color schemes, logos, symbols, those types of things, fonts, colors, slogans, jingles, and sounds. So these are all elements. These are creative elements. It's one component or part of the branding process. There are other things that we look at too, but when you say, hey, I'm into branding, a lot of people say, jump to these things like, oh, you manage logos, or you focus on slogans, or, oh, you redesigned that brand, that name, that jingle, those types of things. Sure, that is. And when we create these, again, we kind of walk through some strategy, criteria for picking brand elements. This is, not just for a brand name, but other elements, as well. Should maybe describe the product, be memorable, fit the product or fit the company's image that you want to have, and also be able to be registered as a trademark. If somebody else has registered it, or if it's in use by somebody else, then there might be some legal issues. So when we talk about these elements, this is really kind of one of the things we go to when we talk about brands. And there are all kinds of different examples. Eagle claw for fishing, and fish hooks, is kind of this image of an eagle grasping with their claws, a fish. Charmin has this image of softness, the color scheme using blue, but more importantly, the shape of their letters are all very soft and rounded, right? Mr. Clean is a clean in terms of getting antiseptic, getting rid of germs, getting rid of dirt. That idea. Wears a white shirt to symbolize this idea of cleanness of that. Other ones here: Subway, Geek Squad. Again, a lot of color variations, a lot of shapes of letters. Those are big deals there. Intel, we'll see if this works, but we have the Intel inside, and also specifically their sound. So let's see if we can pop this on here. There we go. All right, of course. So that's a sound that's very distinctive. If you're familiar with that, you just hear that sound and you automatically know that it's Intel. Now, Intel's interesting too because it's a component part. So it's inside a computer. So you don't actually ever see an Intel processor. You just see the results of it. And you don't even know the computer has it unless the symbol's on it, or you have prior knowledge of it. So their branding challenges are a little bit different, and they've devoted a sound to that to be able to do that. Okay, here's another example. We're going to look through a bunch of examples kind of quickly. We're going to move through them. This is a branding element of a character apomorphism. That's kind of what this is called when you take a fictional character that's make-believe and personify it. Okay, so here's the Jolly Green Giant. But this is the Jolly Green Giant over time. This is the evolution of the Jolly Green Giant for green giant vegetables. So you're familiar with that brand probably, but maybe you don't know that over time these brand elements change and they evolve. We have these images in 1928. We have the man who is a white man struggling with a pea pod. Right? I don't know, the symbolism is kind of odd because if he's a giant, why is the pea pod so big? You know, it's almost like he's a little miniature guy holding a pea pod. And so there's a little kind of oddity there that goes into this. But the color of the skin changes from white to represent green. And he becomes, I guess, at that point, a green giant. At one point, he shifts from a pea pod to a corn stalk. Now, this is an interesting one. If you remember Starbucks used to be Starbucks coffee, and then they dropped the coffee. And one of the reasons why was because they wanted to sell other things other than coffee, tea and snacks and food and soda and stuff like that. Here's another example where we have the pea pod, which kind of ties them into peas, but then they have corn, which is like, okay, now do they do corn and do they not do peas? And then eventually they drop corn altogether and have nothing. So that's another kind of shift in terms of what this brand is trying to communicate with this logo or with this image. Notice the tilt of the head from down to up. That's a more positive perspective and body language. Also, the facial expression turns from what seems like toiling grimace to a smile and a happy look. Getting rid of the corn, adding a scarf. This is a weird kind of thing. We don't know. I don't know why they went with a red scarf. It had probably some cultural meaning at the time in the 1960s, or maybe it had something to represent the company with. But they added this odd green scarf. But notably, they got rid of the specific corn. You know, maybe this means that there's, you know, they're not tied into that product specific category. Oddly, too, with the red scarf, arms are crossed, and usually that's not a good sign, except that it might mean confidence or security, like home, secure, I'm holding something. A lot of times the symbolism of that, though, is shielded, kind of you have something to hide, which then evolves into the 76 logo, and then finally the one you see today on the far right of the screen. Facing right now instead of forward or to the left, or in front of you to the left. So when you face right, it means you're going forward. It's typically the walking forward look. Here in the West, we read from left to right. So when you go in the rightward direction, you're moving forward. And so you're looking ahead to the future. That's what he's doing now. His head is tilted up again, smiling again, kind of thinking about the prospects of the future. So again, there's a lot that goes into this idea of brands and a lot of symbolism. When we look at Toblerone, you might look at this image. This is them. And inside, tucked away in the image, is actually a bear inside the mountain, which is their symbol. This is their symbol of a bear in the mountain, and that's built into their logo. You may never have seen this one before. I don't know what you see when you see this, but this is for the London Symphony Orchestra. And so you may see the image of a conductor with a baton, and one would have the baton moving, but the image also spells out the letters LSO, London Symphony Orchestra. So there's symbolism then in this logo. Pittsburgh Zoo, an aquarium. This may not be too hard to figure out. You've got the image of like a Joshua tree, a tree in a savanna, but the tree is actually embedded with animals. So you see all these different animals that are built into the treescape. Fish down below, you have a gorilla and a lion and seals, and those type of amphibians are in there as well, right? LG, so the LG is, you see in the logo an L and you see in the G, but you also may notice that it's a winking eye, a face. The L is a nose. There's the dot for the eyeball, and the other eye would be winking, like giving you a wink. So that's a friendly gesture in most cases. NBC, I'm not sure that this is the most recent logo. So NBC is unique in the sense that it's a peacock, which shows itself off, but each one of the different plumes of the peacock, the yellow and the orange and the red and purple and so forth, each one represents a different component or division of the National Broadcasting Company, NBC. And so that's why each of those were significant over time, because they had 6 different divisions and each division was represented by a part of the logo. Bronx Zoo. Kind of cool about the Bronx Zoo is in between the legs of the animals, of the giraffes, is the skyline of the Bronx. So it's like kind of the local symbolism of what's going on there. Unilever is kind of different. This is like Unilever is a company that is a conglomerate. It has lots and lots of different products, lots and lots of different brands. And the U itself is made up of different images that represent all the different products and brands they offer. There's a bunch of symbolism in it, and internally there's relevance in every one of the symbols that's there. There's relevance. They all represent something. So for a person outside the company, we might not recognize or know that, but that's what those are. Hope for African Children Initiative. So this is a wonderful logo of a young person looking up to an adult. And that sort of, okay, geographically, of course, it's not perfect. It's a kind of an image of what Africa may look like on a map. But more importantly, we have the hope of looking up to the future and seeing compassion built into this picture. Adidas. So Adidas didn't always have the 3 bars and has modified it quite a bit, 3 stripes, and has modified it quite a bit. So one of the big deals is initially there wasn't really a lot of meaning, but then they shifted the bars or the stripes to be upward, and that was done to represent overcoming a challenge or a hurdle, and that Adidas was there to help you overcome that. So that's kind of the symbolism behind that. Audi, and this is the last one we'll look at. The Audi logo, as you may recall, you kind of remember this, it's not the Olympic rings, although that has a lot of symbolism too. Audi was formed from 4 different companies. And so the 4 founding companies together, DKW, Porsche, Wanderer, and Audi, pulled together as a conglomerate, as a group or a consortium, and as a united group, they were linked. And so each of the 4 circles represents the 4 original founding organizations or companies that came together to build the company. Okay, so lots of symbolism going on there, and even beyond symbolism, there's this last concept we're going to kind of touch base on, and we're only going to mention it a little bit. It's something called brand personality. So we're going to wrap up here. Brand personalities are ones where When you think of a brand, you think of a human characteristic. VH1, again, kind of hip hop music. It stands for kind of young energy, cutting edge type stuff. Wrangler jeans, working hard, gritty, tough. Starbucks, trendy, maybe a little bit too hipster because it's overused nowadays. Jaguar, pensive, deliberate, excessive, but measured. These are all kind of human characteristics, right? And so when we talk about brand personalities, here's again another image. We'll see another one here where we have sincerity, like Hallmark cards. You think of Hallmark as a sincere, honest company. Competent, knowledgeable. Apple would be a good one in here. Toyota's a good one in here. This is an old image. Oracle doesn't exist anymore, but exciting. Nike, absolutely kind of passionate. Sophisticated, rugged. So these are all sort of personal traits, right? And this is kind of the last thing we'll talk about in this video, this idea that we can incorporate human emotion and human persona. And one of the things that we know is that people try to match their personality with the personality of their products. It's something called self-brand image congruency, where personal self and brands images go together. That's basically what it is. This is like a theory in marketing, and one of the reasons why we kind of develop a character behind our products, brand personalities. Okay, so, and with that said, what is a brand? Be able to define and think about what a brand is. What is brand equity? Talked a lot about the components of an equity and why the 4 components of an equity, so don't forget those. Why brands bring value to the firm, kind of what are the components. There are several different things we kind of looked at, and why brands, why there is such a thing called brand value to the firm. Talked about the different elements that go into a brand, different 4 characteristics that make up a good brand, and then finally, or brand element, and then finally this concept of brand personality. There's a lot in this video, okay? There's a lot in what we have here, a lot of concepts, so make sure you're studying those. If you have any questions, let me know, and go from there. Thanks.